I'd like to welcome everyone to this regular council meeting for the Corporation Township of Puslinch on September 4th, 2019, and we will start with written disclosure of pecuniary interests. Any?
Yes, I do have
Rita?
one. I am declaring a pecuniary interest for item 4B, I believe, which is PD-2019-11, Temporary Residence Agreement L04-MAR. And the reason or the nature of the pecuniary interest is that the builder for the project is an employer to myself and is a family-owned corporation.
Okay, thank you. Any other disclosure of pecuniary interests? See none. We don't have any closed items. We'll move on to the adoption and receipt of minutes. Okay. Moved by Councillor Goyda, seconded by Councillor Spoulos, that the minutes of the following meetings be adopted as written and distributed. A, August 14th, 2019 council meeting. B, August 14th, 2019 closed council meeting. C, August 14th, 2019 D14/Sun public information meeting. Any questions or comments on those minutes? All in favor? All right, carried. All right, we're rocking and rolling. Any business arising out of the minutes? No? Oh, sorry, John, is that right? Okay, we have a public meeting. Do we have a motion for that one? So, we have a public information meeting will be held on Thursday, September 12th, 2019 at 7 p.m. at the Municipal Complex, 7404 Wellington Road 34. The bylaw for this matter will be considered at the September 18th, 2019 council meeting. All right, what time? We still got a few minutes before. Okay, we're going to move on to communications. Any questions or comments on the Roselle Road pit license number 625-189-2018? Councillor Bulmer.
Yes, thank you. Interesting when you read, I think it's point 5 under the conclusions, they talk about the temperature thresholds. And, you know, if we think back, establishing those temperature thresholds was a major part of the concern regarding the zoning of this project. And one of the reasons it ended up before the Ontario Municipal Board was over these temperature thresholds. And sort of an 11th hour agreement between all the parties to establish these thresholds avoided a prolonged hearing. And yet, when these thresholds were crossed, the ministry didn't require the operator to address the situation or adhere to the thresholds. It's simply we've entered into a process of finding a different way to deal with it, which to me, it reminds us that what we see on a site plan really doesn't have any bearing on the planning process. We have to be very careful what we consider during the planning process because it's not guaranteed to be part of the operation of the pit in the future. So not a major issue in this case, but it happens it's happened multiple times in the township, so it's an important reminder, I think.
Thank you, Councillor Bulmer. Councillor Spoulos?
Yeah, I had a question, but I had a response from Hardin Environmental, so I'm fine.
Okay. Any other questions?
No.
Okay, we'll move on to the next one. How about the Roselle Pit license from Hardin Environmental, their correspondence? Oh, no, that's not that one. Sorry. Yes, it is. Any questions or comments on that one? 71B? No. Okay. Trying to do maybe one more. Correspondence from the Historical Society with respect to the Colleen School Bell. Any questions or comments? Councillor Bulmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, it's nice. I really support this initiative. This has been, I can remember the auction when this bell was sold and purchased by the former mayor and the vision that he had for it. And it's nice to see, we get lots of ideas, but it's nice when an idea comes with the funding to make it happen. So what I would like to confirm, I think it'd be important to confirm that the location they're thinking of is actually township property as opposed to, I don't know how far the land extends beyond the library there. And perhaps we might want to get some input from the rec committee on if this would be the ideal location from a user's perspective, or if they might have an idea of a better place to place this on township property.
Okay. We have a motion here that speaks of to ensure that the bell is located on township lands.
Yeah.
Maybe we could amend it to just have them, correspond with the rec committee. That's, I feel that's a necessity. Maybe we'll let Councillor Goyda comment first.
Yeah, I mean, I would support putting it on display in a public place for sure. I think especially we've just gone through our recent rebranding of the township, and part of that, says Puslinch is a place which honors its past. So I think that placing this bell in a space for all to enjoy is consistent with that vision. It's also, I think it honors the wishes of Brad Whitcomb, who was also a tremendous contributor to this community. As the representative for the Recreation Committee, I'm happy to bring that to the committee to see if there's if they agree that that's the correct location, or if there's an alternate location that would be best suited. I would be fine with that as well, but I do think that we should allow it to take place wherever that location will be.
Yes, I support this wholeheartedly. It's a link to the past, and it's important to respect the past as well as live in the present, so to speak. And I agree with Council Bowman's suggestion of bringing it to the Rec Committee. I know that we've had our marketing consultant, OBS, that puts forward some very eye-catching signs. Perhaps there might be a consideration with one of the signs that lead into the community center. So perhaps the Rec Committee might have some other ideas that work as well.
Thank you. I think it's a great idea. Anytime we can take an opportunity to remember our heritage and put it on display and a little bit of accolades to our former mayor, I think that's excellent. So we're just going to write out a little amendment to your motion here, and then I'll read it off. Moved by Councillor Spillis, seconded by Councillor Goyda, that council receives the correspondence from the Pusslinch Historical Society with respect to the Killeen School bell, and that council authorizes the Pusslinch Historical Society to place the Killeen School bell on township lands at the Millennial Gardens, 23 Brock South, and that the Recreation Committee be consulted with respect to the best suited location of the Killeen School bell. All in favor? All right. We're a little bit behind, but I'll invite MPP Mike Schreiner, leader of the Green Party, down for his delegation. Yes, please. Whenever you want to start, the floor is
Yeah,
yours.
sure, great. Well, thanks, Your Worship, Mayor Seeley, and members of council, staff, members of the public, for inviting me to come down. It's always nice, even though this isn't my riding, it's always nice to spend time with my neighbors. So appreciate the opportunity to be here today. And I just want to talk about Bill 71 at your request, the Paris Galt Marine Conservation Act, which is a private member's bill that I currently have before the legislature. It has passed second reading with all party support and is at committee. As many of you know, there's a lot of concern about water in this region, both quality and quantity of water, especially since we have a growing population. And I had citizens approach me from Guelph, Wellington County, Halton Region, and Brant in particular, asking me if I would put forward legislation to put in some protections for the Paris Galt Moraine, which is a significant water recharge area for this region. And as somebody who's been worked on water issues a lot over the years, and also as leader of the Green Party of Ontario, it seemed to make sense that water would be one of my first private members' bills. So I agreed to put it forward really with two key principles. One, legislation that I felt could achieve all party support, and legislation that would protect water in a way that didn't target any one company or one industry. That I felt we needed broad protections based on science and also based on the principles that water should be prioritized for people and communities first and foremost. And so I modeled this legislation after the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Act, which was put forward by a conservative government, Governor Mike Harris, received all party support. And interestingly enough, it started as private members' bills put forward both by Liberal and NDP members of the legislature before finally being put forward by a conservative minister. And the bill primarily has 7 objectives. I'm not going to go through and read every single one because I recognize we have limited time and I'd like to be able to answer some questions. But a couple that I think are key is the bill, one of the bill's objectives is to ensure that the Paris Galt Moraine area is maintained as a continuous natural landform and environment for the benefit of present and future generations. That we consider the cumulative impact of water use and population growth to ensure we have enough water to meet our needs, and that we restrict the extraction of mineral aggregates below the water table. Not that we prohibit, but that we have restrictions in place just to make sure we maintain the integrity of our water supply. We've had 5 municipalities pass resolutions in support of the bill: Halton Hills, Halton Region, Guelph, Burlington, and Milton. I was just at AMO. I'm sure many of you were probably at AMO as well, and I had a number of delegations, particularly Brant and Wellington areas, Waterloo areas, reach out to me with interest in the bill as well. So I'm really here to, answer any questions you might have, address any concerns that you might have about Bill 71.
We really appreciate you taking time to come outside of your riding and come visit us in Footslunch, and I'll open up to the council for some questions. Councillor Bulmer.
Oh, boy. Still taking notes.
Do you need to come back to you?
No, that's all right.
Well, Councillor Bulmer, I'm happy to send you any information you would like in addition to my comments today.
Oh, no, this is great. I really appreciate this opportunity, and I hope today is as interesting or perhaps even more interesting than your blind date yesterday, so.
How does everyone know about my blind date
Well,
yesterday?
there's no secrets in this world. I really appreciate that you came, because I saw your presentation at the City of Guelph, when it was regarding the Clare Maltby secondary plan, and I'm a strong believer in the idea of nothing about you without you. So since the majority of this proposal would affect, in terms of area, here more than there, I thought it was important that you come here. But I did understand how important that you spoke to them about regarding the Clare Maltby, because that is one of the most sensitive parts of the moraine, and it is the one most threatened by urban development.
Absolutely.
So I did see it as somewhat ironic that they're going to develop the most sensitive part, but that's okay. That's their decision. Anyhow, just to give you, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to preface my question just with a bit of background and why I might have some questions regarding this. I was fortunate enough to be in a position years ago to support the development of the Greenbelt plan through my role on council to follow the natural boundaries as opposed to municipal boundaries. And I actually encouraged our municipality to support the Greenbelt. And we took a lot of comfort here in the township that if we were included, that we would be able to round out our hamlet of Morriston. Not expand it necessarily, but at least round it out. Because I felt that the Greenbelt was all about protecting farmland and the natural environment. And if we could round out our hamlets, we struck a pretty good balance. But then we started to see, when the Greenbelt was enacted, we started to understand actually the Greenbelt was more about preserving access to natural resources, where you couldn't dig a foundation for a bungalow, but you could cut down a forest and dig up 100 acres for a gravel pit. That didn't make sense to us. So, and when Morrison got frozen, we started to see it a little differently. So when the push came to expand the Greenbelt, and we were looking at the unintended consequences, where someone who might want to develop a campground where people could enjoy nature, that wouldn't be permitted, but you could truck in thousands of truckloads of untested fill or fill from who knows where to bury nature. It just didn't make any sense to us that we would want to expand the Greenbelt to expand those impacts that we felt were largely unintended and largely unreported. So you understand, when I hear what you're trying to do, I fully support it, because I was also on council when the province removed the previous protection from the moraine. It was at one time considered an area of natural and scientific interest, and the province removed that protection. And I supported the county in developing policies to help replace that. But again, going back to the law of unintended consequences, I want to make sure that what I'm hearing is intended, it will achieve what I'm hoping it will achieve. So when I heard you talk about prioritizing water taking for the use of people, that's an interesting change of phrase from what was being bantered about before, which was prioritizing water taking for municipal use, which sends alarm bells off for those of us who live in the country, who are people on wells. So
Absolutely.
what is the actual language in the bill? Is it going to be focused on prioritizing municipal use or prioritizing personal use or use for personal? people?
Yeah, Councilor Pullman, so excellent question. So for people, because we certainly recognize that not only Puslinch, but many areas of the Periscole Moraine are municipalities that the majority of the residents are on well water. And we certainly want to make sure that we protect water for both municipal wells and personal wells. And I would argue for farming and agriculture as well. I think should be pretty high up on the list. Feeding people and making sure people have enough water to drink. And that we have enough water for industrial development as well. I mean, we certainly don't want to restrict economic development either. And I think one of the things I like about the Oak Ridges Moraine approach is that it doesn't prohibit development. It doesn't say no to development, and obviously in my riding in Guelph, Clare Maltby, ironically enough, is a major development that affects the moraine. And so it's ensuring that the development takes place in a way that maintains the integrity of the moraine to serve as a critical recharge area. And so, I'm much less concerned about somebody putting their basement foundation in, and much more concerned about filling over, the hundreds of pockets of water collection in the Clare Maltby area, which was, as you know, when I gave my presentation, the city of Guelph was my primary concern. The primary concern, in the conversation there, and so I will admit, though, Councillor Bulmer, that the legislation is designed in a way that does give a significant amount of influence to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing in particular, because they're the ones who will have to write the actual conservation plan. And as we all know, oftentimes the devil's in the details. But the plan would have to comply with the objectives outlined in the bill. And as I said, I shared some of those objectives with you. And in terms of the Greenbelt, it's interesting because I would say the first thing I was involved in when I first became a politician and was leader of the Green Party was actually fighting a power plant that the government was building in the Greenbelt right adjacent to some of the best farmland in all of North America in the Holland Marsh. So I do find it ironic, and I appreciate you stating the irony that we certainly want Greenbelt protections, but sometimes those Greenbelt protections don't provide the kind of protections we want. So I appreciate your comments in that regard.
So one last comment, then I want to pick up on a couple of things you said as well about below water table extraction, and we're talking again about municipal use of water. And I guess if I were to compare the two, one of my concerns is that the impact of municipal water taking, especially in a place like the city of Guelph, where it's a full loss system, it takes it from the ground and puts it in a river. It takes it from bedrock and puts it. So that's a full loss system. Compared to a below water table extraction, which I understand. Believe me, we're on the front lines of aggregate extraction. We understand the impacts. We've been reading reports for years. We know there are impacts, but the scale is nothing compared to the impact of a municipal system that is taking it from the bedrock and dumping it in the river. So I guess if I were to, one of the things I'd like to see, if my concern about putting more growth directed towards those type of municipal systems is that they are not without impacts, but they're often characterized as if the water is being produced magically without impacts. And I think to be fair to the natural environment and how the system actually works is to recognize that there is a limit to how much a groundwater-based system can support. A full loss groundwater system like that, as opposed to more of a closed loop system like the region of Waterloo uses with the rivers, and where it's taken from the river and replacing to the river. And that would be more in line with when the Greenbelt went along its natural boundaries. It wasn't suggesting that just because it's municipal, it's without impact, but everybody has an impact. And absolutely. I think we're better off if we direct growth to the systems that have the least impact. And in some cases, that may be a rural system, that may be a municipal system, but it isn't guaranteed that a municipal system has less impact than anything else. So I just hope you can keep that in mind as you move forward with your legislation.
Yeah, absolutely, Councillor Bulmer. If you have any recommendations, if you have any concerns around the legislation, certainly when it comes up at committee, I'm happy to consider amendments to the bill. I mean, this is what politics is all about, is how do you work across party lines and across municipal and riding boundaries to come up with the best solution that benefits the people of this province. I would say that in terms of directing growth, I think many members of the community in Guelph, including myself and many of the councillors, would certainly share your concerns about how much growth the province is directing to communities like Guelph and mandating growth on communities like Guelph, where we do have significant concerns about just water supply, given we're the largest city in Canada that relies solely on groundwater. So if you want to assist us in suggesting to the province that they look at directing growth to the appropriate places, we're certainly happy to have that conversation.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bowman. Councillor Bowman. Councillor Goida.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming today. It's an honor to have you here and speak to us. I think, firstly, I would just really like to commend you on your perseverance in advocating for change that will hopefully, make a difference towards a more sustainable future. I personally, I think that not only is this legislation the right thing to do for our children and future generations, but also a fiscally responsible thing to do. And I wasn't able to attend your presentation at the City of Guelph, but I did look up some YouTube videos to try and understand a little bit better. And, it made a lot of sense what you said, that the moraine is a natural feature that filters and cleans the water naturally for free. And the alternative to that is, I can't even imagine the cost in infrastructure to substitute that natural feature. So I think not only is it something that we should care about in terms of the environment, but also in terms of the cost of it as well. And so, besides endorsing this bill here at council, which I am hoping to bring a motion forward to do, I'll let the rest of council speak first before I do that. But, as a local municipality, what else can we do to sort of help push that forward and meet those objectives?
Yeah, well, I certainly appreciate you bringing up the fiscal component, 'cause that's one of the things I've emphasized, and I know in my conversations with members of the current government caucus, particularly MPPs in this region, they've appreciated the fact that I've had a lot of considerations around fiscal impacts. And also, there are some transitional provisions in the bill that were brought directly by members of the current government, just to ensure that the bill doesn't have an unintended consequence of having fiscal impacts of developments that are already in process. And so there are transitional provisions in there. So I want to ensure that the bill is fiscally responsible from a public purse standpoint, both provincial and municipal, but also doesn't have significant negative fiscal impacts for capital investments that have already been made. The fact that I received all party support gives me some confidence that there is some support for the bill. But I think the biggest thing now is putting pressure on the government to bring it through committee, because obviously the government controls the agenda through the House Leader's office. And one of the feedbacks I've heard from them is that having the voice of local municipalities that are directly affected by the legislation would certainly alleviate concerns the government might have that there would be local opposition. So I think your voice, if you are supportive of the bill, allies some of those potential concerns the government might have. So it would certainly be appreciated, and I think would certainly make a difference.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Spoulos.
Yes, I firmly support the bill. I just want to follow up on a comment that Councillor Bowman made. The timeline to receive comments for incorporation, what sort of timeline are you working to?
Yeah, so I don't know when the House Leader will bring the bill forward at committee. And obviously there has been, and I don't like to engage in speculation, but there has been some speculation we might see a proroguing and a resetting of the agenda, which then would wipe it off the order paper. That being said, if that doesn't happen, I'm looking at sort of fall timeline, I'm hoping. I did meet recently, with and encourage the government members if this is a bill they could bring forward, I think it would make a great statement to people, particularly at this moment where there is, maybe a little more toxic divide, partisan divide in our politics than we would all like, as an opportunity for the government to show good faith in sort of overcoming some of that and showing how we can work across party lines. So my hope is that we would see this fall, that's when the comments would flow in. But I'm certainly open to comments and feedback, anytime. And I have incorporated comments and feedback into the original drafting of the bill, particularly from MPPs in the region.
Now, so a question for Council Bulmer. Would you be prepared to come up with these comments and forward them to council so we can look at them and then, as a council, forward them to the MPP?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's a very kind ask. I'm not sure if I'm the most qualified, but I'd probably defer to our CAO to determine if it was best if it came from one of us or if we asked the county planning staff to have a review on it. I don't want to overstep the bounds of the doing around here.
Okay. I think if we have any suggestions, it'd be good we as a council agree
Okay.
to them and we forward them on as a council, and I think that holds a lot more weight than an individual member.
I would agree. Mind if I ask my question of the CAO?
Sure.
Is it appropriate for me to be doing that, or is it more appropriate we should defer to our staff?
Is this on? I think it's completely appropriate. I think perhaps following this meeting, we could sit down with the county planning staff, yourself and ourselves, and brainstorm a little bit about some of the issues, put something together and bring it back to council for consideration. But I think any background information, obviously you've had a lot of history with respect to the broader issue of environmental protection in the township, and I think at a staff level, we would really appreciate learning about that and incorporating that into a report. So to sort of conclude, I think we could work with the county planning staff, with the councillor and our staff to work on a report that we can bring forward. I would certainly recommend, given the fact that the matter is before you today, that it may make sense to make a determination that Councillor Goyta's resolution perhaps could be brought forward today, but some of the technical pieces we could bring forward after we have our meeting.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Councillor Goy, or Councillor Slapoulis.
With your permission, Your Worship, may I ask just to respond very briefly? I just want to give a shout out to Puslinch, because I know you have a very strong water monitoring program, and I've been very impressed with the work the township's done, and I just want to be on the record of complimenting you for that work and your staff in particular.
Thank you. You can read the 800 pages of water monitoring. If you like. So I really appreciate you coming down. I have a couple questions. What would be the impact on this bill on our corporate citizens that have permits to take water, if any at all?
Yeah, so it potentially could. Those who already have permits likely will not see no impact. Where there potentially could be impact moving forward is if the science suggests that we do have potential water shortages given our population growth and given the necessity of measuring cumulative impacts. It could have effects on future either initial applications for water taking permit or renewal for water taking permits. So that would come out in the details of the plan put forward by the minister. But there are transitional provisions that that provide protections for people with existing water taking permits. So it wouldn't affect them until they would have to reapply for a water taking permit. It would affect new water taking permits, obviously moving forward once the bill's in place.
New or renewals?
Both. It could affect both. Yeah.
So the way I'm understanding it, say the city of Guelph, I've heard, talk of that they lose 5 million liters a day. And if some study comes out that says there's a water shortage, they're going to cut back the industrial users to facilitate the city or whoever it may be to maintain their water flow versus trying to, maybe cap the leaks per se. So the onus will be put on our industrial users to reduce to facilitate that, or will they kind of hold everybody accountable equally?
Yeah, so I think everyone would be held accountable, but obviously when the details of the actual conservation plan comes out from the ministry, that would be outlined in the regulations. So the bill doesn't go to that level of technical detail. So it's hard for me to speculate other than those levels of the technical details that would come out from the ministry's plan would have to comply with the objectives. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it. We have a
I wish I could answer that.
I
And if I was the minister, I would be in a position to answer that. But unfortunately, I'm not at this time.
we have an obligation to take into account our corporate citizens.
Absolutely.
interests
I
as
understand
well.
that.
And one of them in this township, they are the highest taxpayer in the county, and that's pretty significant, right? So that's just the basis of my question. But there's many permits to take water in Whistler. I'm sure you're well
Absolutely.
aware. So I just concerned that there could be a sweeping effect. But I appreciate your bill. I think it's great. Trying to protect the environment is top of my list, and I give you a lot of credit for getting us through as far as you have, and hopefully it gets passed.
I appreciate that, Your Worship. And just to be clear, one of the reasons I wrote the bill with broad objectives was with the intent that no individual company, industry, sector would be targeted. Obviously, there are special provisions around aggregate extraction. I've been fully transparent about that, but even that, the language doesn't say prohibit, it says restrict. And so that's mostly to make sure that proper protections are in place for below the water table extraction.
And let me be clear, if the science says that whoever it may be needs to be restricted on their water taking, then that's what the science says. That's the way we should go with it.
Absolutely.
But the science says that it's a renewable resource, and so I'm all in favor of go with the science.
Let's leave it to the experts.
Absolutely. I have this motion from Councillor Goyda, and Councillor Swiss.
Just want to clarify with the CAO. Do I need to put a motion forward on the fact that we are asking you to meet with the county planning people and Council Boomer to come up with a document to forward?
I don't think it's necessary. I mean, as long as it's reflected in the minutes, we know what the actions are, so we'll reflect them in the minutes and we'll make sure it gets done.
Thank you.
All right. Moved by Councillor Goyda, seconded by Councillor Spillis. The council receives a presentation from MPP Mike Schreiner, leader of the Green Party of Ontario, with respect to the Paris Gulf Marine Conservation Act, and the council endorsed the passage of Bill 71, the Paris Gulf Marine Conservation Act 2019, and the council forward correspondence to the Minister, Municipal Affairs and Housing with respect to council's endorsement of Bill 71. Sorry. The Paris Gulf Marine Conservation Act. All in favor?
I have a question.
Oh. Councillor Balmer.
Just in light of Councillor Sapoulis' suggestion that would the council that put this forward be willing to amend this that with the purpose of preparing our support for this bill, that we do this little report and that be used to, I'd hate to prepare support something, we end up then, we all get together, oh, we just found something in the details that we don't like. You know what I mean? Maybe just prepare the report and so we can form our position to support the bill?
And prepare a report on Bill 71?
Yeah.
And present it to council?
So to help prepare our response to the minister.
So at the end of this, I don't really want to read the whole thing again, but it says, the county planning staff, township staff, and council discusses the technical details of Bill 71 and report back.
In order to prepare a response to the province. Just sort of change the order around, so we do that first, then we endorse the bill.
Okay.
Does that make sense to the Councillor Goyda?
I think Councillor Gord has done a lot of work.
Okay.
We can say endorse the bill in principle and.
Perfect.
And then we carry on with more detail.
Perfect.
So you want to amend this to say in principle?
Councillor Goyda.
I would be okay with that. Yeah, but I would prefer that we endorse
The bill so Pierce.
today.
purpose.
I don't think that the comments can be received at any point among, at any point in time, and hopefully be incorporated into the act. But I think it's important, especially how quickly things seem to move, to do it now.
Super.
Okay, are we all comfortable with that?
Yeah.
I'm not going to reread it. It's going to be amended as in principle. Says go. Okay, all in favor? Carried. Thank you, Mr. Schreiber.
Your worship, thank you, and I appreciate your time today. Thank you, and your support.
And we'll move on to our next delegation, which is Mr. Todd White, Executive Director of CRINS.
Do you want to sit here?
How you doing?
Good.
Well, yeah, you can have a.
Oh, I get a clicker and everything. Oh, boy, high tech. Well, while I'm waiting for my clicker, Your Worship, and through you to council, thank you for the invitation to come here today. And I understand, I think you all actually have a copy of the presentation that I provided staff. I'll try to keep my presentation fairly brief and then open it up with your agreement to questions, because I think most of it you'll find pretty quick, and then
We have a report at the end of our agenda that deals with this as well.
Exactly.
And, if you have the time, you may want to stick around.
Or can we just put them together?
We talked about that, and then we were going to, and then we decided not. Just because there's budget implications, I guess we can move it all
Oh, that's
forward.
fine. I'm kind of just.
What do you think, Mr. CAO?
I think the plan that as we contemplated initially makes sense. So there's not going to be a lot of time between the presentation and when the question being brought forward.
Okay, perfect. We'll test it here. Oh, good, all right. So I'll begin by just giving you a little bit of background on CRINS itself. We were formed in 2011, so at the end of 2011, December, so we're coming up to the end of our 8th year. And basically, we're a not-for-profit corporation that is owned by our municipal members. We have municipal members from coast to coast, whether it's town of New Glasgow, Nova Scotia, or Salmon Arms, BC, but a little closer to home, the city of Guelph and Guelph-Hermosa are both active members, and we process applications for them on a constant basis. Pretty much most of the municipalities up the 401 all the way to the Quebec border are members as well. So membership is limited to municipalities and provincial government agencies that have land use authority responsibilities. And basically, we have about 350 members currently. So one of the things that people say is, well, what does CRINS do? And our mandate, and the easiest way to sort of position it, is we are in essence a planning commission who solely deals with radio communication sites. So within the context of our members, all of our members delegate us the authority to deal with these applications. And that's all we do. We deal with them. Our funding, because that's always often a question, we are not funded by the federal government. We are not funded by the proponents, Bell, TELUS, or anybody who builds towers. Our funding comes strictly from the application fees, which we receive when an application is submitted. So basically, our role is to receive applications on behalf of our members, evaluate these applications against a number of criteria, which I'll get into a little more detail, and then provide a recommendation as to whether the site should be built or not built, and that recommendation goes to the minister. In this case, the minister I'm referring to, I used to call him the Minister of Industry, now he's the Minister of Innovation, Science and Economic Development, which is the new title for the industry department. So one of the things that is important to know with radio communication sites, and it's often a point of confusion, is that all antenna systems and radio communications are federal undertakings. And that causes a bit of consternation in a number of instances, because the municipalities and the provinces do not have the final say as to whether a tower is built. it is the minister. And it is, as a federal undertaking, a tower is being built in the context, it's almost as if it's being built for the Government of Canada directly. So the Planning Act doesn't apply, variance applications don't apply, building permits don't apply. Instead, it's all done through the lens as if it was being built as a federal facility. So when we receive an application, one of the questions often is, well, what's our role here? What do we do? Even though it is, the buck ultimately stops at the minister, there is a set of procedures called Client Procedure Circular 2-0-03 that basically outlines the procedures that all proponents must follow when they want to build a radio communications tower or install an antenna system on a rooftop or on a water tower, etc. And within that procedure, a proponent is expected to go to the local land use authority and receive feedback as to whether where they're planning to build the tower is appropriate. That doesn't mean that the municipality makes the final determination, but the feedback is meant to be received. So what we do when dealing with this, and we are kind of in a unique position because when we receive an application, we're evaluating it on the federal criteria, we're evaluating it on provincial criteria, and we're involving the planning aspect at the local level. So we will come to a municipality who's one of our members, we'll receive an application, we'll go to the planning staff and we'll say, tell us the current uses, what's the zoning, how is it being used today? And then we will use that to kind of assess what some of the implications are. Now usually, local planning staff have a very good inventory of assets, whether there's historical properties, natural conservation areas, etc. And they will provide that feedback to us. We will go away and take a look at that and determine if the proponent is attempting to build a tower that is offside either with provincial regulations or municipal or with any of the federal. And there's about 47 different federal acts that we have to kind of review. So we look at all of that in totality. And then if it passes the initial test, then we will conduct the public consultation, and we conduct the public consultation. The reason we did that was one of the complaints that used to exist outside of CRIN's members is that the Industry Canada, or ISEDC, default process for doing a public consultation would not pass muster by any municipality. Basically it's send out a notice to, a 2-page notice to everyone within 3 times the height of the tower, and it doesn't have to have half the information that most people would consider reasonable. And so, these things were happening all the time. Our consultation materials are extensive. They're a 25-page document, full color, site plans, everything. Most people say it's too much information, but we much rather err on that side than the other. So we conduct the public consultation, and the reason we do that is quite often, again, people will say, well, I never received the information. I didn't, nobody told me about this. So we're very particular about being able to audit those steps to prove that, yes, people have been notified, yes, they've had a chance to provide their input. And quite often, usually either people could go one of 2 ways. They read the materials, they understand it, and they're perfectly fine. It answers all their questions. Or they know something that there is a problem with where this tower is going to be. And I'll just use an example. We've just recently worked on a proposal in the city of Kingston where, from a planning perspective, it almost looked reasonable. It was a mixed-use area. There was commercial use, so it's not right away. But when you actually looked at it, it was backing onto residential properties. There was an old pit mine that was there, so there was geotechnical problems. It would have been unstable. There was a road widening going on. So all of these things finally come to us, and we say, well, no, you can't build the tower because of these reasons. One of the other advantages for CRINS is that we are a third party. So we endeavor to present ourselves as very much an honest broker. The proponents know what to expect from us. They know the information that is expected to be handed in. They know what we're going to do with it. We get the planning input, we get all of this information, and we try to represent all of the interest and work through the issues. Quite often, a lot of times, towers are, it's not so much that you don't want the tower. It's that it could be moved 500 meters a different direction. It looks better for people. Most people want the service, but there's a right and a wrong way to put these infrastructure in. And that's what we really attempt to do. In terms of the process from a CRINS perspective and for the municipality, it costs nothing for you to become a member of CRINS. Basically, you delegate the authority to us to deal with these applications. You designate a contact point within your planning group that we would work with. And then basically you would adopt our protocol. And I know the protocol document, I think, is attached to the materials. That protocol document is used consistently across all the municipalities in the country. But what we do with each municipality is we provide them an opportunity to identify community-sensitive locations. So, we say every municipality has its charm. So if you were to go to Guelph, anything within a certain radius of the Speed River, anything in relation to the I think it's a basilica or cathedral downtown, can't have any towers. So you can specify your no-go areas, you can specify preferences. That is provided to us, and whenever we receive an application, usually we receive it and we're asked for pre-consultation feedback, and that's when we would say to them, look, you're in an area that's going to be difficult for us to justify. So the protocol is a process. It's uniform. Doesn't matter whether it's in New Brunswick or Nova Scotia or here in Ontario. It's done consistently. But each municipality has the ability to provide its own sort of input into the process of where a tower should be. And so, like I said, it costs nothing to be involved. We ask councils to pass a fee into their bylaws. So we determine a fee. It's a collected fee of our fees and the cost for the municipality for planning input, what have you. We combine that and ask that you put that into your bylaw. And then that's the only funding. We serve at the pleasure of council. You can join this week and leave us 2 months later if you wanted to, but we haven't had any of those situations, so that's pretty much it. So I'm going to sort of stop there. Again, you have all the material, and I'll open it up to questions.
Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation, Councillor Bulmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon and welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing the information in your presentation. This certainly would address an issue we've been having with particularly cell towers. We haven't had many concerns raised about the fixed wireless towers, although people have had questions. So I can certainly see how the part of the protocol that deals with these non-excluded installations would address the concerns we're having. The questions I have, I would relate more to the protocol goes on to deal with things far beyond what we're currently having any issues with, such as excluded installations and the idea of the township being required to initiate and do an annual planning exercise with. So maybe I'll focus my questions on those things.
Sure.
If when I look at the definition of a radio communications site in the document, when I read that, I guess, would I be correct to assume that television antenna towers for personal use would be exempt from this?
They are. In terms of the jurisdictional aspects, it is still regulated by the minister. So it doesn't matter whether it's a ham radio operator or a satellite dish or any of that. It is still technically under the minister's jurisdiction. Now, in terms of if you are not a telecommunications provider, so in other words, someone licensed under the Telecommunications Act, anything less than 10 meters is exempt from any form of public consultation or review. So if a ham radio operator runs a wire out his window and into the tree, nobody's going to ask him any questions. Or if you put a satellite dish on the roof of your home, that's not going to be a problem. And that's just common sense. But if you are a telecommunications provider, there is no height limit. In other words, if it's 2 meters, you still have to go to public consultation. And that that was a change back in 2014 because actually the township of Milton can tell you about this. It used to be 15 meters for telecommunications providers, and amazingly, all the towers became 14.9 meters overnight when they wanted to get a tower into position. And there was about 40 of them that put up, and the outcry was pretty extensive. And that got back to the minister, and that was changed. So a telecommunications provider has to go to consultation no matter what. Private interests, so for example, a cab company that needs to put up a VHF antenna for their radios, again, if it's over a certain height, yes, they would go to consultation. If it's under, it's not a problem, or private interest.
Yes, that's quite clear regarding the federal requirements. But section 4.3 of this protocol brings all of those then into this protocol and be subject to this protocol.
Yes, but part of the protocol is if it is an exempt site, which we would consider those towers under 10 meters to be.
Excluded or exempt?
Excluded.
Okay.
We kind of use it interchangeably. Section 6 of the CPC calls them excluded, we
Right.
call them exempt.
Okay.
Basically what happens is we want to know about it. So in other words, if someone was going to, let's say a cab company wanted to build a tower for their radio, we'd want to know about it. But if it was under 10 meters, we would just simply say, okay, thank you for telling us the information. What type of radio are you putting on there? And that would be it. Now, the reason we even asked the question, and I'll give you an example, there was, and I'll use the city of Fredericton, sometimes it can be almost innocuous. Someone can put up a radio tower next to another facility that's using radio frequencies. And if the frequencies conflict, you can have a problem. And in fact, in the city of Fredericton, we had someone try to put up a tower, and when we did the analysis, we realized that it would have messed with the wastewater system. They were the SCADA information feedback. So we said, no, you can't do that. So that's why we want to know about the radios, but even though there may not be a public consultation associated with that tower. So there's a distinction. The federal government's view of it is municipal input, public input, it's all the same to them.
Yep.
We'd make the distinction that there's certain responsibilities that are undertaken by the municipalities, for example, that is different from the public. So because they are looking at the planning and industrial facilities and what have you. And so we try to make that distinction. So we like to know about everything so that the planning staff also knows about it.
Right, I understand that. I just wanted to confirm that it's still subject to the protocol.
It is still subject.
No, I should say, the expectation is to be still subject to the protocol, and then therefore subject to the fee, the application fee?
No.
But that's
So-
not clear in the protocol. It doesn't say that projects that are excluded by the federal government would be exempt from the fee.
Yeah, so generally what happens, and it works, municipalities have done this two different ways. For commercial undertakings that would have an exempt facility, so in other words, they're installing antennas on a rooftop, there is quite often a smaller fee because planning staff sometimes have to look at the building, make sure that the structural aspects of it and what have you are considered. So, for example, if you use the city of Guelph, the fee is $27.50 for the full application, and for an exempt facility, commercial, it's $500. There is no fee for if somebody wants to put up a ham radio tower. There's no fee for that.
That's not clear in this protocol.
It's not the fees. We don't touch the fees written into the protocol. That is a discussion with the municipality. So,
Good, okay.
So, we can sit in the room and staff can sit in the room and decide what the fees need to be. We know what our costs are to do a public consultation. We just simply say, here's our fees for this year. Now, you decide what you want to add to that to cover your cost, and then we can decide for full application, commercial application, and whether there's anything for private.
So you don't have a fee for an excluded or an exempted? You don't charge a fee for those?
Not necessarily, no.
And what if someone put one of those up but didn't contact either? But they're still compliant with all the federal legislation that applies to them, but they haven't.
Yeah, generally speaking, if you're talking a private installation, what usually will happen is if someone is putting up a tower and they require a license from the federal government to run it, so it's a ham radio operator using a licensed spectrum, they know they have to follow the CPC. At that point, the protocol applies. If
If they're under 10 meters.
Well, the CPC says they don't have to go to public consultation
Right.
under 10 meters.
Right.
But that makes it an excluded facility. Under our protocol,
Perfect, okay.
they still have to notify us.
Well, you'd like them to notify you.
Well, they're supposed to notify us,
but there's
but
no,
we're not going to take them out to public consultation.
Yeah, but there's no legal requirement for them to notify either of us.
There isn't, but I'll say, there's no legal requirement, but the standing precedent is.
Okay,
they notify us.
I just wanted to make sure I understand the difference.
Yeah.
Because we're going to endorse, I want to make sure before I endorse something that will affect our residents, I want to make sure I understand what I might be subjecting somebody to.
Yeah.
Maybe a good way to do this was, I was thinking about, in there you talk about, in section 4.1, it talks about all the different things that are excluded. But then 4.3 talks about that they'll be subject to something, and one of the things that was excluded was emergency communications.
Yes.
By the federal government, but then would be subject to the process. So if a ham operator wanted to set up a temporary facility, they'd have to go through this process in order to get approved before they set up an emergency.
If it's an emergency less than 30 days, no.
But that doesn't say that in here either.
It says in the federal. So you have to read the protocol, our protocol,
Yeah.
in the context of the CPC documents.
Understood.
So under the CPC document, an emergency communications less than 30 days, no problem. And we know that. And if someone said, oh, someone's putting up a site, yes. But is it an emergency? Yes. If they want a temporary, so one of the other options is temporary sites. Temporary sites can be built and put into effect for 90 days. They still have to notify us.
Okay.
We have to say, yes, it's okay, because you're not going to impede anything else. But we're not going to take them to public consultation. And that's usually just a quick.
Well, I understand that, and again, it's have to and would like them to. I just want to make sure we're clear on that. There's, again, this is a nice for all of the excluded installations. This is all. It'd be nice if they contacted us, but they're not obligated to.
They're not obligated in.
Make sure.
Unless they're a telecommunications
Yes,
provider.
I understand that.
Right, yeah.
I'm trying to think of the average person at home.
The average person at home is not going to have us showing up at their doorstep saying you've done something wrong.
That's what I'm trying to make. I'm just trying to confirm that.
That's the common sense part of this, right?
Good. Common sense isn't always built into everything, and I'm just making sure.
It's very true. Yes,
So
very true.
forgive me for being persnickety, but
Yeah. No,
I don't want to be blamed for making people go through a whole lot of hurdles.
That's fair enough. I guarantee you, we have enough work at our office. We don't need to be chasing people for their ham radio towers and
Good.
satellite dishes.
So I'm glad I can take some comfort in the fact that we, despite what our enacting bylaw right now doesn't differentiate between the two, but what you're saying is we can, in our enabling bylaw, differentiate between both excluded and non-excluded, so that those that are excluded from the federal process may or may not be subject to a reduced fee.
Sure.
At our end.
Yeah, and
You're not going to charge anything to the municipality for those.
Well, we and again, how it normally works is we set up the fee schedule with you.
Okay.
We collect the fee directly, and then we just turn around and hand you the portion that you've allocated as being yours.
Okay, super. You understand, this is starting to sound, in my mind, in some ways it reads like we're going to ask, if someone wants to put up a garden shed that doesn't require a building permit, we're still going to ask them to pay for a building permit they don't necessarily need.
Well-
Just to confirm that it doesn't need a building permit.
Yes, and one of the arguments, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned building permits, is that building permits are not required for a federal undertaking.
No, but I'm talking about other little things that.
But
you don't
in
ask them
fact, proponents will come for a building permit because it gets them in the GIS system. It's part of the assessment, and this is a fight that we've actually had with the federal government because we represent municipalities. Is the assessment of towers. There's all kinds. MPAC has less than 33% of all the towers in this province on their assessment roll, and that's because normally, if it's a development, it goes through a development permit, a building permit, and that's how they would find out the information. No building permits, no development permits. What do you have?
Not on the horizon, yeah.
It's not even on their radar. So we've gone back to them, and in fact, one of the services we provide to the government of Alberta is we provide them a monthly update of all the new towers so that they can go out and assess them. MPAC is not quite there yet.
So last, Mr. Mayor, I'm just getting my last couple of points here. Has to do with Section 3, which is the new work that it seems to commit us to doing regarding annual reviews or annual reports. One of the points is that the LUA, the Land Use Authority, which is, whenever I saw that, I read township, because that's what the definition is, that we shall invite all of the proponents to submit their plans for the next year. So we're committed to doing this where the...
You actually, and I'll step in.
Yeah.
In fact, it's us that does that. It's not the municipality. So you as our members, we will go to Bell, Telus Rogers, and say, will you let us know what your plans are?
Okay.
And we're the ones that do that. And if, like, for example, this year, we're starting to see a tremendous uptick in applications. It was quiet for a couple of years, but now they're trying to prepare for 5G, which is the next generation of cell phone technology. So what has happened is we're seeing a large uptick in applications. So we've gone back to them and said, what are your plans? And so we have plans for Rogers, we have plans for Bell. They've given us all their information as far as where they're planning to do their builds. And so now we know in advance what they're planning on doing. Now, as they go out and actually acquire sites and sort of point out where they're going, we can sort of direct them and say, well, you don't want to go put a tower over here because that's a natural conservation area.
Right.
Don't go here, don't go here.
Understood.
So that is something that we offer to them.
Well, I see that in Section 3.1, but in 3.2 and 3, it's specific, then it is the LUA that will hold the meetings with each of those groups and review all the applications.
Yeah, and in fact, it's us that has been
So
doing that.
then perhaps we can change the language. I'm just hesitant to adopt something that says we're going to do it, but you're telling me you're going to do it.
Yes. Well, we become your designated authority on it, so that's why we're the ones that do it. We kind of define our own workload. So yes, I mean we can certainly change the wording to be more clear, but
That'd be great. If we
practical-
change to CN, whatever your acronym is for you, as opposed to LUA.
Sure.
Because I was surprised when I saw that. The reason I supported going ahead with this is it was going to reduce the workload for us. And then I saw Section 3, which had our staff doing extra
Yeah.
pieces. So I commend you. You've addressed all of my nitpicky little concerns.
Well, that's
I
fine.
really appreciate your patience.
Now,
in dealing with me.
I should mention the part of the reason that wording is there is there are some municipalities where planning staff want to have insight directly. And I mean, obviously we're happy to have any planning staff that wants to be involved to understand what proponents are planning. Usually it comes into effect when there's developments.
Yep.
So if you have a large number of homes being built, it's better to have the telecommunications providers in as part of that discussion because they can place certain types of towers that look a little better. They can position them better relative to the development. And done with a proactive approach, this infrastructure is not terribly invasive. But usually what happens is towers are being built after the fact. A developer built a 350 home development. Now all of a sudden there's a huge demand for traffic on the cellular network, and now they got to figure out where to put a tower. Whereas we try to, with the annual plan, part of it is to say, oh, well, there's a development here. You might want to consider talking to the developer, and allocate some space to put some small towers in there just so you can provide service. That was the intention of the thing.
Oh, I see the value in it.
Yeah.
I was concerned when it was committing our staff to do additional
Yeah,
work. that we weren't doing now.
no one will show up and say, you haven't done your homework. Usually, it's the proponents coming to us saying, here's what we're planning. Do you have any feedback for us? And that's when we will come to the planning staff and say, are there any developments? Here's where they think they need towers, and that's usually when we find out, there's 4 developments in the pipeline.
I'm less concerned about people coming, like you coming to the door saying we shall. It's then the residents, we commit to doing something, and the residents are concerned that we are not upholding our end of the bargain. We committed to doing this and we're not. But if we can amend the agreement or the protocols to clarify that it's not our responsibility to take care of that, that'd be great.
Sure.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer. Councillor Goyda?
Thank you. Thanks very much for coming to Council to present to us today, and also thank you to Councillor Sapoulis who brought forward the motion to have you be a delegate today. What I in reading this, what I really liked about potentially becoming a member in the service is what you have written as your first bullet point under the mandate, and that is to serve as expert staff for municipal members to evaluate proposed radio communication sites. And I think this, to me, is really important because, you know, we've just gone through an application that had a fair amount of opposition, and as we went through that process, the magnitude of the technical data that was being presented was just starting to go way over my head, and I definitely don't have the expertise to evaluate based on wavelengths and gigahertz and all that stuff. And, you know, I think that technical data also, you know, it's not fair to expect our staff to have that expertise either. So in that respect, I really like that being a member, we have people with experience and the technical understanding to work through, you know, the best locations for these towers. And I think it also allows for a consistent approach and making sure that all the correct protocol is followed when processing the application. I think it allows for clarity and transparency, which, you know, the last application, the transparency issue was a big thing for me, and you know, you've touched on that as well as in your bullets in your presentation. The one thing that I was curious about is you have written again in here as part of your mandate is educating the public on issues pertaining to tower siting, and I'm wondering, you know, when you say educate the public, what types of things do you do to do that?
So usually, the educational function happens in one of two ways. Someone calls our office and says, you know, someone's putting up a tower, I have concerns and they have questions, and so we can educate them one-on-one. Oftentimes, it occurs when there is a tower application and there's a big concern. I think of municipality of Meaford, actually, which was has a very active public and a very active council, and so you get a lot of people that come in. They're bringing in, you know, their latest Google article they found about this, that, or the other thing, and they're throwing all this down. They're trying to make sense, and someone, as you say, has to kind of sit down and say, okay, well, the article says this, but what they're not telling you is this, or, you know, and you have to sort of sort that out and provide it. And so there's a number of times where we will be invited into a public meeting and, you know, people are throwing papers in the air and we have to sort of calm it all down and say, okay, let's walk through this. And we do that often. We take everybody through the technical aspects and tell them what is real and what's not, and, you know, why you don't need to be concerned about this, but you should be concerned about something else. So we that's just part of the educational mandate that we do, and usually it's usually in a contentious situation, and a whole bunch of citizens are concerned, and so we have to sort of go in and sort of fulfill that role, and that's how we do it usually.
Okay.
And to be fair, also the public consultation materials, again, the packages are pretty extensive, so by the time you've read it, you've gotten a good primer.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Spoulos?
Yeah, I have several questions. Thank you for coming. Looking forward to starting work with you. First of all, the section 4.4.2 dealing with community-sensitive locations, we haven't identified any per se other than what's in the list. So you're saying that process will be you meeting with staff and identifying them?
So usually what happens is, as you'll notice, there's four key aspects. There's natural conservation, archaeological, you know, historical buildings, etc. So there's those four broad strokes, and that is supported directly by federal legislation. Now, every municipality has, again, its charms. So City of Fredericton has their garrison district in the downtown. Guelph, you know, it's the Speed River, and again, I forget if is it Basilica or Cathedral?
It is now, yeah.
Yeah. So that the view plane from that building is something they're trying to preserve. Everyone has certain things that they prefer. So again, every municipality provides a list. We sit down, people will provide input. We should protect this. We should protect that. That's a historic building. So we will sit with staff and say, what do you think? Staff usually, especially planning staff, usually knows where these buildings are and what the concerns will be, and they can provide an initial list. And what we do is we put that in our inventory. So when we receive an application for a particular municipality, we look at where it is on the map, and we've already drawn out on our GIS system, this is a problem area. Oh, okay, well, what's the problem? So then we call the planner and say, well, here's where the tower is being proposed. What do you think? And a community-sensitive area is just an area, from our perspective, that needs to be looked at more closely. It doesn't necessarily mean the tower couldn't be put there. And I'll use an example. A basilica in Miramichi, New Brunswick, they really needed to get service, and they got the permission to put it on the basilica. But the basilica is 200 some odd years old. It's Acadian heritage. So we went back to them and said, yes, you can do it, but here's what you have to do. And they had to custom make all the antennas to look like brick. The covering, it was an extra $100,000. They didn't want to do it, but they said, well, if you want that site, that's what has to happen. So that's the kind of thing that will be done. Just because it's a community-sensitive location doesn't mean it can't be done or it won't be done, but there may be some extraordinary efforts that have to be done above and beyond.
The other question I have is, this is from a resident who was involved in a very controversial tower siting location. Again, 4.4.2, it states that any properties located on or within a distance of 3 times the height of the structure from a natural conservation area. Would this clause apply to conservation protected wetlands within our?
Absolutely. Conservation authorities, we deal with them all the time. As a matter of fact, Township of Brock, we just had to get a tower moved a couple hundred meters because it was too close to the wetlands. And it wasn't even on the wetlands, it was just close to it, but because of the way that the water flow and source water protection, which has become a big issue, of course, we ended up moving the tower based on that. So if it's close to an environmental protection area, an EP zone, or something that's, similar, we're always talking to the Conservation Authority, and we do it here with Wellington.
Okay, so it's the Conservation Authority gives you that input as opposed to the residents?
Well, the residents, at the end of the day, the residents might mention it, but we will go to the Conservation Authority, and the Conservation Authority will tell us whether it's a legitimate concern. So they are deemed as the experts, not the public for that purpose. So that's how it generally works.
Okay, I have a question of the CEO. With respect to filling out our sensitive areas in Post Lynch, how do you propose to do that?
Well, I guess
I guess I'm sort of leading the question here. Is this something that we should have the public provide input on, or are you comfortable enough that staff's comfortable enough that they have the areas?
Right, so you have an official plan. The official plan designates or defines those areas that are environmentally sensitive. We have a new zoning bylaw, which has the environmental overlay included in it as well. Plus, we have the regulated areas that the conservation authorities provide permits or not provide permits in the regulated areas. So I think it's well covered. It's in 3 separate documents. If I could, just one other point with respect to the delegation, after listening to this, I was wondering, where were you 10 years ago when I was the CAO with Halton Region, and we spent hours, if not days, debating things that we really didn't have any specific knowledge about. So we were a large organization, but still we didn't have the expertise. So when John referenced this, Councillor Sapulus referenced this a couple of weeks ago, I thought, this is perfect, because the beauty, I think, of the model that you have is a not-for-profit, municipally run or municipally led initiative. It's a full user pay arrangement. So those who are benefiting from the service have to pay the freight. And of course, it's expertise. And the fact that you've got 300-odd municipal members now seems to indicate that it works. We've done a little bit of due diligence in talking to a number of other municipalities, and they're quite happy with the service. So I think this helps the staff, because we don't, as Councillor Goyda said, we don't have the expertise internally. If you get into a big debate or a big issue, then you're expected then to hire consultants to deal with a federally regulated responsibility, and it's just extremely expensive, time-consuming, and frustrating for everyone. So I think when you alerted us to this opportunity, I immediately thought this is exactly what we need in this community and other communities. So from a staff perspective, we fully support this.
I just want to add one comment. I want to acknowledge the resident who gave me this information. So without that person emailing me, advising me, I wouldn't have known about this organization.
Well, I appreciate your presentation. I look forward to working with you in the future, and everything that Mr. CAO said, it's best to have the experts review it, and it's zero cost to the municipality, so
That's the best part, right?
that's the best part. Well, the best part is we're going to have experts, and as long as there's a component of the community involved in these reviews, I mean, we're really connected to our community, and it's important to us, and I look forward to it. So do you have time to wait around?
Yeah, I think you said it wasn't going to be that.
I don't believe it'll be that long. We could move it up if to facilitate him being able to leave a little sooner, just deal with the motion.
Actually, can I change my mind again? I think given the flow of the discussion and what's left on the agenda, it might be useful to deal with the topic now.
Sure. So we're just going to go to, what is it here? I have it up, just I don't want to lose it. It's under planning and building, and it's D. It's the CRINS report. And then there's a motion. Now, we've amended the motion, Ms. White Fox and I, and we've changed the wording to address Councillor Balmer's concerns. So I'll read the motion as it stands and then just read the amended part. So moved by Councillor Balmer, seconded by Councillor Goyda, that report PD 2019-013 respect to a membership with the Canadian Radio Communication Information and Notification Services, CRINS, be received, and the council authorized the Township of Puslinch to become a member of the Canadian Radio Communications Information and Notification Service for processing radio communications facility applications within the Township of Puslinch, and forward a letter to CRINS advising of the decision, and the council authorizes CRINS and its staff to act as the authorized representative of the township for the purpose of receiving and acting upon all radio communication applications, reporting to and working with the development and legislative coordinator, and where do we start here? And as amended, to clarify the responsibilities of the township with respect to section 3.1 annual review. That council adopts the CRINS attendance system siting review and consultation protocol, and that council authorizes a combined application fee of $2,293, where $543 is remitted to the township to cover administrative costs, and the $1,750 is remitted to CRINS. Any questions or comments on that? Councillor Balmer.
Thank you very much for that amendment. I would ask one other concern that I was speaking about was this still would require that those that are excluded projects would still be subject to a $500 fee here at the township, should they choose to participate. And since it's to our benefit and to the community's benefit that they do share that information, I'd prefer that it was a no fee for excluded, that we'd have a two-fee structure so that excluded projects would not be subject to a fee, to encourage them to actually share that information, since they're not obligated to under the law.
Mr. CEO, do we need that amendment, or if it's not listed specifically that it's an excluded antenna,
Part of the
there isn't a fee?
structure, yeah.
Maybe for clarity, if the motion reads that the excluded applications would not be subject to a fee. So just for purposes of clarity, it would be wise, I think, to include that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So I won't reread all of that. We'll just add that component.
I think I want you to read it.
All right, Councillor Goyda.
No, I would support that. I have no comments.
All right, now, all in favor? Carried.
Thank you, Councillor Sapoulos.
Thank you, Councillor Swills, for bringing that
Thank
forward.
the resident who's in the audience today.
Yeah, well, that's how we all
Christie,
learn.
thank you. Is that who it was?
Christie, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so now we're going to go back up to communications, and we're on the Mill Creek Coordinated Monitoring Report, which is number 3. All right, so I'll just maybe wait for Ms. White Fox. So communications, the Mill Creek Coordinated Monitoring Report, January 1st to December 21st, prepared by LRG Environmental. Any questions or comments? No? Okay, the next one is the Stantec Surface Water Monitoring Report. Any questions or comments? No? Just mark these off. Then we have the Mill Creek Aggregates Pit Hydrogeology. Any questions or comments on that one? Did I miss one?
You missed the fisheries.
Oh. Okay, sorry, we'll go back to, what is it?
No, I
Oh,
don't
sorry, the
think.
Technical Appendix C Annual Fisheries Report of Mill Creek. Any questions or comments on that one? Nope. Actually, I was reading this one, was the hydrogeology, there's two. So I went B anyways. All right, and then Mill Creek Pit Hydrogeology Monitor Review prepared by Hardin. Any questions or comments, Councillor?
Yeah, I'd like to have this letter forwarded to the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry as our input to the report. I think our consultant's done a very good job of keeping tabs of the issue there with respect to the ponds and the concern with the water levels, and I think we have to keep the pressure on by forwarding this to them, and also
Do we need a motion for that, for Mr. CAO?
I think if it's referenced in the minutes, we'll be fine, as direction.
Council, everybody's comfortable with that? I would think that's fair. Any other questions or comments on that one? Okay, and then the next one is the Mill Creek Hydrogeology Monitoring Review prepared, no, that was the hard one, sorry, next one. Correspondence with respect to site plan amendment for the Mill Creek Pit from Robert Cumming.
Well, that's for the Lafarge.
Yeah. It says Mill Creek in my notes here, but it should say Lafarge. Any questions or comments?
Oh, right.
Just a comment, a bit disappointed with the tone of the email, just basically forwarding somebody else's email, so I would expect them to be a little bit more respectful of our requests.
Yeah, just to follow up on Councillor Spoulos, I'm not surprised by the response, but I think, to be fair to, I believe it was Councillor Spoulos who brought this forward in the first place. If I think back to the request, we were asked them to come as a delegation to present us the changes, but I think what they were asked was, would they be willing to hold a public meeting? So maybe they answered a different question than we were actually hoping to ask them. Is that fair?
I don't know, but he could have written something and clarified it, saying, rather than just forwarding and high priority and
Yeah.
with check marks. I think any of us who would have got correspondence like that, we would be put out.
Right. We've done better.
Yes.
Okay. I just thought they answered the question they got, but not the question that the council had asked, so.
Just on that, if I'm not mistaken, it was in our August council meeting that we asked if they would come that you put the motion
Yeah.
forward to come as a delegate.
Delegation, that's right.
And I noticed that this response came initially on July 24th, but then for some reason wasn't forwarded until the 22nd. So I'm just wondering if, like, something just seems skewed here. I'm
Yes.
not sure if the request was actually forwarded to have them present at council, and if we had a response to that, or if this was something prior to that they're actually responding to something different than what we think they're responding to. If that makes sense.
Wasn't the original request about if there was going to be a site plan amendment?
Yes.
And they're not there yet.
Yeah, subject to it, and then I followed it up with a follow-up on the August meeting. So the original motion was in July, and then I followed it up again after we got this email
Yeah.
from Carol.
I mean, I'm comfortable with, clarifying and sending it again. I can guarantee you, he's more than willing to come here and be a delegate.
That's fine. All I want is our residents to have an understanding of what's going on with the site plan amendment. That's key for me, given the recent experiences we've had.
And I would concur. I think the issue is they've answered the wrong question. If you look at the email that below it, it's a question about a public meeting not appearing as a delegation.
So do you want to send another piece of correspondence asking for delegation upon site plan amendment application?
I think perhaps maybe that's already been done, and we maybe just haven't received a response to that request yet. But
Maybe staff can
that-
look in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
leave it to staff to look in.
Untie the knot.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, so that should be, that's going to go, yeah, communications. Do we need a motion to accept the communications or just, okay. All right, we're going to go to IG. Intergovernmental Affairs, we have the first one, which is assessing the impact of Bill 108 on municipal parks and recreation. Any questions or comments? So I spoke with, I'm going to talk a little bit about this with my mayor update, but I spoke with the parliamentary assistant for municipal affairs and housing, and you know, I bounced some ideas off them for this community benefit charge, and I believe the director of finance may be able to provide an update at our next meeting on the community benefit charge.
Yes, I can, but I can provide a quick update right now. So the Ministry of Finance asked municipalities to complete a survey, and basically in the survey it indicated, some of the questions indicated how much are you currently collecting for development charges and for cash in lieu of parkland. And so we responded to that, but I will provide an update report to council at our next council meeting, just discussing the results of that. Okay.
Sorry, and there was one important thing as well in that communication, the survey. They made it clear that there wouldn't be a decrease in the amount of revenue the municipality was receiving. Is that the language they used?
Yes.
So, and I think that was a concern, I think, that many municipalities had, that they are changing the rules, and the net result is going to be a reduction in the amount of money that you get from growth-related capital, parks and recreation facilities, for example. And it was nice to see something from the Ministry of Finance indicating that there would not be a reduction, and that was included in the survey. So that was very comforting.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right, 7.6, fixing the housing affordability crisis, Amos Housing paper released. Any questions or comments? Okay, Minister's letter to the heads of council on the OCLIF third payment. Any questions or comments? Notice of motion for, this is the Yana Burns correspondence. Any questions or comments? Then we have Ontario releases remainder of municipal cannabis funding. Kind of a duplicate of the previous one. Any questions or comments? Good. So that's- Thank you. Moved by Councillor Goyda, seconded by Councillor Spoulos, that the intergovernmental affairs correspondence items listed on the council agenda for September 4th, 2019 council meeting be received. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. All right. Reports. Let me just get my computer scrolled down. We have none from Pussonage Fire. Finance. Any questions or comments on the first quarter financial reports? Councillor, go ahead.
Yeah, I do. It's more of a comment than a question, and it relates to the vehicle maintenance line in the financial report. I think this year we heard bits and pieces at our council meetings from both our former director Don Creed as well as our supervisor of public works Michael Fowler about some of the challenges that they faced in terms of equipment breakdowns that have taken place this year. And I spent some time with Mike Fowler in the back shop this morning, and I think, you know, despite doing above and beyond in terms of preventative maintenance on the trucks, breakdowns are happening, and it's starting to really show in the numbers. And you know, from what I can understand, some of these repairs are just sort of a cost of doing business type thing, but some are because the equipment is just, it's old and it's being stretched too far. And I think we've been lucky thus far that service levels haven't been affected, and the whole department has done a really good job of moving, you know, having equipment do things that they're not meant to do just to get the job done. But I think that, you know, as we continue to do that, equipment's going to continue to break down. Staff work longer. There's risks of accidents. And, you know, I think that as the budget approaches, we really need to take a good look at the equipment replacement, which I know both Supervisor of Public Works and our Director of Finance are working on as part of the capital budget. But I think we really do have to spend some time and look really seriously at that, and find some creative solutions in ensuring this equipment is reliable, and that, we're not putting our township at risk and our staff in danger. And I think this is something really important we need to look at.
I agree. Councillor Spools?
Yeah, I had a bunch of questions, and staff met with me and went through them. The only question I still have is the fire and rescue expenditures. If you look at page 1313, you can see that the fire and rescue are trending over budget. In other words, we should be having roughly 75% of the budget left. They're at 69%. My concern is this a trend that we should be concerned about? Is the fire department cognizant of these this downward trend, and are they doing anything to get back on budget?
We don't have any representatives
Yeah.
from fire.
They were here. Maybe they're on a call, I'm not sure, but they just left about 10 minutes ago.
So if I'll be happy if you just forward that question to them and then just email back.
I would like to be CC'd on that as well, please. Okay. All right. Any other questions for the finance? Moved by Councillor Spool, seconded by Councillor Goyda, that report finance 2019-028 regarding the first quarter financial report 2019 be received. All in favor? Carried. And then we have the addendum to the feasibility study for water and sewage servicing. We're receiving that for information. I believe there's going to be a presentation, what do we say, August 18th?
18th.
September 18th?
September 18th.
So we can ask our questions then. That's okay. Moved by Councillor Spool, seconded by Councillor Goyda, that an addendum to the feasibility study for water and sewage servicing prepared by SEMA Canada Inc. dated August 26, 2019 be received. All in favor? Carried. All right. Administrative Department. See anything here? Nothing there. Oh, the meeting schedule. Any concerns with the meeting schedule? Councillor Bulmer.
Not a concern, but just, I'm now not available for the one in September. September, I think it's 24th or 25th?
Okay.
Yeah, 25th. I won't be able to attend that day.
Okay, we'll miss you.
Sorry, something came up,
Right.
so.
Councillor Goyda.
Just one quick, maybe it's more of a question. The first council meeting of the year, this is kind of a strange circumstance where the holiday falls on the Wednesday, which would normally be our first council meeting of the year. So it's been put on the Thursday, January the 2nd instead. And I'm just wondering, given that the township office is closed between Christmas and New Year's, is it feasible to have a meeting on that day? Is there an agenda that will be prepared before the shutdown? How will that work?
So, yes, we have looked at that. The procedural bylaw is very clear. It describes when we have the situation, it should be on the following day. So that's what our procedural bylaw says. We've met as department heads, and essentially they will simply be required to have their reports in for my review probably the middle of December. And we'll have the agenda put together, and we can certainly carry on. We're recommending carrying on with the meeting.
Okay.
Okay. But, the fact that we now know, we can anticipate the flow and structure of the reports to make sure that it's done well in advance of the Christmas break.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you. Moved by Councillor Goyda, seconded by Councillor Spoulos. The council receives and adopts the 2020 council/budget meeting schedule attached as Appendix A to Report ADM 2019-023. All in favor? Carried. All right, now on to planning and building. We have the building report 2019-007. Any questions or comments on that? No? Moved by Councillor Spoulos, seconded by Councillor Bulmer, that report building 2019-007 with respect to the building department monthly update June 2019 be received for information. All in favor? Carried. There we go. And this is the one that Councillor Goyda has declared a pecuniary interest on. Okay, so any questions or comments on the temporary residence agreement? I'll read this out first. Moved by Counselor Spillier, seconded by Counselor Ballmer, that report PD 2019-011 regarding the temporary residence agreement, the agreement between the township and Michael Marinovic for the land described as rear part lot 20, concession 7, designated as part 1 on reference plan 61R-577 and known municipally as 7424 Wellington Road 34, Puslinch. The lands be received and the council authorized entering into an agreement with Michael Marinovic regarding temporary residence agreement and the council delegate authority to staff to enter into temporary residence agreements. Questions and comments on that one? Good. All in favor? Carried.
Normal course of business.
All right. Welcome back, Jessica.
Thanks.
Okay, now we have the similar one. We have the bus pad agreement. Let me just scroll down here a little bit. Okay. Moved by Counselor Ballmer, seconded by Counselor Spillier, that report PD 2019-0112 with respect to the bus pad agreement, the agreement between the Township and Wellington Vacant Land Condominium Corporation, number 172, for the land abutting Wellington Road 34, Puslinch, the lands be received, and the council authorized entering an agreement with Wellington Vacant Land Condominium Corporation, number 172. The council delegates authority to staff to enter into bus pad agreements. Questions or comments? Counselor Ballmer.
Yeah, thank you. Just interesting that this is happening on a county road allowance, but the agreement is with us, so maybe I could ask the CAO to explain why that's necessary for us to get involved in this.
So apparently, it's related to the sidewalk, and apparently the sidewalk is under municipal control. Our staff did contact the county to see who is responsible, who should the agreement be entered into with, which party, and they said it's our municipality, the township should be doing that. So given the relationship with the sidewalk, which I guess is ours. So that's the reason why, and that's why it's before you today.
Oh, okay. Or is it the bus pad is considered a sidewalk by the county?
I would
And therefore,
presume so.
I presume so, yeah. I'm getting this secondhand. I asked the staff to contact them.
Super.
They did, and the response back was it was really our responsibility, so
well, just like the sidewalks in Aberfoyle on county property.
probably, yes.
I get it. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? No? Okay, all in favor? Carried. We dealt with D already. So we're going to planning recommendation report from the County of Wellington. Thank you. Moved by Councilor Ballmer, seconded by Councilor Spillier. The council received this planning report by the County of Wellington Planning and Development Department, and the council passed a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 1985 on the subject lands as outlined in the report dated August 26, 2019. The council passed a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 023/18 on the subject lands as outlined in this report dated August 26, 2019. Any questions or comments? Councilor Spillier?
I just want to comment that this did come to PDAC, and PDAC supported the application, and we noted from the presentation approximately 10 new jobs were created, so that's up on Ford's agenda, job creation.
Yeah.
So the report's silent on PDAC comments, and typically they have that, but for some reason it was not included.
Any other questions or comments? All right, I think it's a great opportunity. It's going to provide some affordable housing for some individuals in our municipality where there was, if my memory serves me right, there were 3 applications and 2 of them were in the city of Guelph and 1 in Puslinch. So none of these other local municipalities in the County of Wellington received any affordable housing plans. So it's an excellent opportunity in Puslinch, and I think this was a little bit about thinking outside the box and
Oh, yeah.
and trying. And there was a lot of work done by Sunrise on this, and
Oh, yeah.
good for them. They've done a great job. Really appreciate it. All right, all in favor? Carried. All right, what are we on to now? So now we're on to F. And the Pepping GM Blue Plan with respect to municipal development standards. Moved by Councilor Goyda, seconded by Councilor Ballmer. The council receives the updated municipal development standards policy as amended, and the council adopt the updated municipal development standards policy as amended. Any questions or comments on that one? No? All in favor? Carried. All right, so now we're on to roads and parks. All right, do we have a motion for that one? Yep, thank you. Moved by Counselor Spillier, seconded by Counselor Bowman. The council receives report PW 2019-003 intersection review for information. Questions or comments? Counselor Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Mr. Fowler, for all your work on this, and Cowan Insurance as well. I appreciate all the work that's gone into all these intersections. I know I was campaigning the intersection of along the 4th came up as well. That's come up a couple times over the years, so I'm glad it finally got looked at. Just a question or two regarding Watson and Maltby. I was, I had no idea. I live on the road, so I know there's traffic, but until you see it in numbers compared to the other, I've seen the traffic counts for other roads. Considering the volume of traffic that's at that intersection, is the rate of accidents higher than expected or within expected because of the volume that's there? Do you know? Cowan didn't comment on that in the report.
I think it's his opinion as well as mine that I think we're due to the traffic count, especially on Watson, that peak rush hour times, that it's actually below average as far as collisions.
Okay, so it's performing well based on the traffic flow, but it's not performing well based on the community's expectations.
I would agree. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Super, and those improvements haven't gone unnoticed. I've heard from several people that they're there, but I continue to hear comments about what people call some optical illusion at the intersection, and I don't know. I haven't seen anything in any standards around optical illusions, but it comes up quite regularly when you're driving east on Maltby. There's something that it doesn't look like there's an intersection there, and I know that maybe can't be addressed, but certainly I appreciate the effort that's gone into it so far. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to say, first of all, I'm happy to see that you've taken the steps to address some of these concerns. I share the concern with Councillor Balmer, especially on that eastbound Maltby Road. That intersection scares the living daylights out of me every time I drive by it. Just one quick question: would rumble strips on that approach ever be considered? Is there advantages, disadvantages to that? Does it help? I really have no idea. It's just...
In my opinion, rumble strips would be a way to identify an intersection approaching. I'm pretty sure the residents within that intersection would probably be upset with the
noise
throughout the day and night. And
okay, fair enough.
so it would be maybe now noise pollution complaints we would receive.
All right.
But in other areas where it's less populated, I would say yes, they would work quite well as far as identifying an intersection.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks.
Yes, a comment with respect to the Leslie Watson intersection. You and I had a chance to talk, Mr. Fowler, yesterday, and my comment originally was I drove out there and I was looking for the sign that says hidden, and there wasn't one, and you and I talked about it, and basically, as far as I'm concerned, whatever the consultant says, if we need the word hidden, we should put it in. If we don't, then let's not put it in.
Yeah, following our conversation, I ordered 2 tabs. So they're on order and they will be placed once they're in. The word hidden. It makes sense. It does make sense. I mean, the sign is identified as a hidden intersection sign, but to the general traveling public, the bottom tab that literally says hidden makes complete sense.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. I have no questions. All right, so all in favor? Carried.
The forum, after all, is the general public.
Review, Recreation Department, none. Mayor's update. I'm pretty sure everybody had a chance to read the correspondence, and I have to thank Mr. CAO for his assistance on preparing these correspondence. I think 3 of them were 90% me, and 1 of them was maybe 90% you.
100% you, Your Worship.
It's a team effort around here, and I don't need credit. I am quite comfortable just working together. But I believe AMO was a great opportunity, and if in the future some of the council members can take advantage of going to AMO, it's maybe has a reputation of being high level for mayors, but there's plenty of councillors there. There's excellent opportunity to network, and there's a lot of work done in the hallways. And myself, as you guys know, I'm new, and I'm becoming much more comfortable approaching these ministers. I'm realizing that they're just humans like us as well. And, you know, in the delegations, our MPP, Mr. Arnott, he would generally pop in and just show his support for us. And then, you know, and his assistant, Rachel, stayed for the delegation. And I felt they went very well. Maybe everybody feels they go very well. I spoke to Minister Mulrooney about the Halton Inspection Station and our desire to not have it located on prime agricultural land. And I felt that there are opportunities between Guelph Line and even in Morrison Industrial Base to place the inspection station, specifically under the hydro wires, as the land is already owned by either the MTO or the Hydro Generation Corporation. And I said, yes, there are some challenges to placing the inspection station there, but I believe that our prime agricultural land is worth investigating those challenges, and even lands, like I mentioned there just a second ago, west of Guelph Line, they're not being farmed. They're vacant weeds, but they're not flat. So there's challenges to put the inspection station there, but we're not taking up current farmland. They seemed receptive of it, and so I'm looking forward to their responses. I'm not sure how long it takes for them to get back. What did the Premier say? I believe it was 600 or 700 delegations over the 4 days. Mr. Mulrooney had 70 or 80 alone herself. The parliamentary assistants were assisting with them. So all in all, it was a great conference. I felt that we were heard, and I'm optimistic that we'll get some correspondence back on some major issues, including the bypass, the inspection station, and yeah. And hopefully a few of you can go next year, if you can find the time. I know it's difficult. All right. What are we on?
Just a question. Any idea where the location will be next year?
I believe it's always in Ottawa, is it not? Or does it move?
It moves around. We'll find out for you. We'll find out.
I didn't know it moved around. I apologize for that. Okay. Then we have, looks like, any notices of motion? Oh, all right. So number 11, the committee minutes. Moved by Councillor Balmer, seconded by Councillor Goyda, that the committee minutes of the following meetings be adopted as written and distributed. July 9th, 2019, Committee of Adjustment meeting minutes. July 9th, 2019, Planning and Development Advisory Committee meeting minutes. Any questions or comments on those minutes? All in favor? Carried. There you go. Municipal announcements.
When you're done, can I say something?
Absolutely. Any councillors, municipal announcements? Fall fair.
Yeah.
No, I got one.
I got one too.
Councillor Good.
I just wanted to bring up that the Friends of Mill Creek, they wrapped up their ranger program at the end of August, and they had an appreciation event on August the 22nd, which I unfortunately was not able to attend because it was the 1 week we were away for holidays. But it was not very well attended, and so we have a Mill Creek meeting coming up in the next couple of weeks, which hopefully will get sort of a recap on the ranger program, which I will then report back to council on. But one of the things that was potentially brought up was, rather than have an appreciation event, which is sometimes not so well attended, but rather perhaps to have them come present to council next year as to what they did throughout the summer and what kind of progress they made. And
Great idea.
I hope, that council would support that, because I think it would be good for us to know as well. So that's it.
I think that's a great idea. Councillor Spools.
This is a bit tongue-in-cheek. I'd like to welcome the new clerk to council.
Finally, somebody more nervous than me sitting here. Any, Councillor Bulmer, any municipal announcements?
I think, well, the Optimists have set the date for the All Candidates Night. It's going to be Wednesday, October 9th. But, there's lots of time to...
For the federal election.
For the federal election, yeah.
You had me worried there. I'm like, oh.
I know.
All candidates night. Oof.
Oh, no, not that one.
And we know that the fall fair is starting this weekend,
Yeah.
which is great to attend. I'm a little busy. I got a baseball tournament, but my son joined the garden club this year, so we'll be dragging all the zucchinis and tomatoes and potatoes, and all of that there on Friday. I'm looking forward to it. He's pretty excited, so hopefully to see usually Council Odell make an appearance. All right.
I think,
Any unfinished business?
James, I think,
Sorry,
Actually,
Mr. Seal.
it was apropos to what Councillor was said about the clerk and about our process. So this is the first meeting cycle where you have a new clerk and a new deputy clerk. And I must say that there's nothing like adversity to bring out the best in people. So everyone pitched in to put this agenda together. Pitched in so much that there was 1,660 worth of material for your reading pleasure. And of course, we had a short week, so we had the holiday on Monday. So on Friday, the document went out. I was most impressed with the fact that over the weekend and on the holiday and on Tuesday, there were inquiries from council. So clearly, when you should have been at home with your family, we're reading 1,660 pages worth of material on the long weekend. I was very impressed, though, on the day that we were open on Tuesday with the inquiries that we're getting from members of council. So clearly you've read it all and you're asking staff good questions. And we were here on Monday and, in fact, this morning answering some of those questions. So that's a real testament to the fact that you take this seriously, you read all the material. Courtney has been incredible in terms of trying to assemble all of this. I must admit that we've had Nina on speed dial a couple of times to give us some advice on how to put this together. Mary and her team have been very, very helpful as well. So this was our first attempt to put together a package. We're learning things. So one of the things that we've decided that we're going to do next time is much of that 1,660 odd pages related to appendices to reports, which are important, but they're quite voluminous. So perhaps having the agenda online with the full document, but maybe having the summary and summary recommendations available. So for the reader, who maybe they can plow through 100 pages rather than 1,600 pages, it would be good for the public. And we will still have the record. It'll still be on the website, but it's a bit overwhelming. We printed off a copy because I guess there's a couple of folks, taxpayers, who really enjoy reading the agendas. And I said, oh my God, when that person sees this thing this thick, they're going to, their heads are going to explode because they've got 24 hours to read all this material. So we're going to make some improvements that way, but I must say the whole team really pulled together. And it was really, I think, reassuring and helpful, I think, and rewarding to staff to know that the reports are being read. Yes. And really good questions are being asked. And again, this has been an odd week given the Monday being off. But we got a lot of answers. We provided a lot of answers, I think, to questions of members of council over the weekend and on this morning and also yesterday. So it was a good first experience.
Excellent. Good. Well, Pat, I have to say, I really appreciate your guidance and through this period and just your approach on even some complaints that come through the door, some outstanding issues. You tackle it, you deal with it, and you're approachable. And even some people that might be a little bit spicy with the township, you're able to calm them down and work towards a resolution. And it's very rewarding for me. I truly appreciate everything you're doing for us. Okay. Any other unfinished business? Where are we at? Bylaws then? There's none. Confirming bylaw. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Balmer, seconded by Councillor Spillis, that the following bylaw be taken as read 3 times and finally passed in open council. Bylaw BL 2019-053 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council for the corporation of the Township of Puslinch at its meeting held on the 4th day of September 2019. All in favor?
Yahoo.
Carried. All right. 254. All right, moved by Councillor Balmer, seconded by Councillor Goyer. The council hereby adjourns at 2:54 p.m. All in favor?
Wahoo.
Carried.
that's not too bad.